Are you currently in GMT or EST?
Yeah, T
GMT.
plus
So
one.
it's like late evening for you. Thank you so much for your time and for being here with us. And shout out to everyone else who's here. All right, all right. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, I would like to introduce you myself, but I don't think I'm going to get the whole picture. So can you do us a favor
You
of
should. You should.
I should? Okay, okay, okay. So everybody, this is Kennedy Ekezie Joseph. He is one of the most remarkable people that I know. He's currently the CEO of Keepa and a multi-venture interested. I think do you identify as a multi-hyphenate person?
People call me that, but I don't know. I don't know these terms flying around these days, but I guess that's true. I
Okay,
guess that's true.
because I mean, I binge watched a bunch of your videos. I binge watched a lot of your content, and it seems like we could even have a conversation about like marketing and branding, to be quite frank. Um, but beyond that, like talking
Listen,
about like your philosophy, like undergrad as well, it makes sense to like your thought processes. But I mean, all in all,
yeah,
this is the man. This is a voice in our generation, and such a remarkable one at that. So it is my great privilege and my great pleasure to be having this conversation with you. Did I do a good
of
job?
course. Yeah, you did an amazing job. Thank you, Debbie. It's great to be here. And hi, everyone. I was trying to hi Olajide, Adora, Fola, and Vio. Hi.
And you guys can drop in the chat at any time. We're gonna have a section at the end, towards the end, where we would be able to take questions from you. I mean, it could be preemptive or it could be based on what Kennedy shares when we run through these questions. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started. All right, so I have three icebreaker questions to begin, and this meeting is being recorded, so it's gonna be uploaded somewhere. But just letting you know.
Yeah.
So my first question here for you is, if you had to describe your entrepreneurial journey as a movie genre, what would it be and why?
Well, God, I don't watch movies, so I'm struggling now to remember like all the subgenres.
So there's romance,
Um,
sci-fi, horror, thriller.
it will be horror that you can't get your eyes off of, like that you want to see through to the end. I think that's all horror, really. Like everyone wants to, you're enamored by it, so it probably will be horror. Um, but the good horror, the good kind, the fun kind. Yeah. It's like, yes, there's a cliffhanger, but you never get to the cliff, it always recedes. It always recedes, and you're chasing it and it always recedes. So um you kind of have to enjoy that process of chasing it because that cliff is eternally elusive. So yeah.
Okay, sounds more like a thriller though.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that word didn't come to mind. So, I need to
No
now
one
go
dies.
Google genres of movies.
Awesome, awesome. Let's see. My second icebreaker question here is, let's say you could start a business with any fictional character. Who would you choose and what would the business be?
Any fictional character. Hmm. Wow, I love these very Gen Z questions. I'm not used to my brain is, So would fictional characters be like movie characters or like, like a Bart
Teacher.
Simpson, for example? Hmm. Hmm. Oh my God, I'm struggling. I'm actually struggling to think of who. Wow. But I promise I need to come up with a good answer because I feel like there's someone and I need to get that person. I just don't want to blot out anyone. So we'll come back to I
Okay,
know you
we'll come
probably
back.
send these questions, but I do this thing where I intentionally never look through questions for panels because I like serendipity. So I'm glad you sent them, Bill. And thank you. So
Okay, okay. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, we'll circle back to that one. Someone remind me. And
I have
now
to think
into
on
the
it.
formal questions, right? Because we are here to, I mean, I did title this 10 things every young entrepreneur should know, but we're structuring in such a way that I feel like by the end of this conversation, myself and everyone here would be able to take away things, tidbits based on your knowledge and experience so far that can help guide us in our entrepreneurial journey or not. we can probably, take away from this, like maybe this is not really what I should be doing, or, help to get us in a place where our mind is more sharpened and, ready to go on the journey if that's what we need to do. So my first question here, and by the way, guys, please, as you're listening to Kennedy talk, whatever comes in your mind, just write it down because we will have some time at the end to, take some questions from some more. So for you, Kennedy, what are some telltale signs, in your opinion, that someone is not ready to be a business owner and instead, perhaps they have a problem conforming to leadership? And is this an issue, like in your perspective?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely is an issue because there is people who have the bad habits, which is they just, are not disciplined and, don't know how to do the things that they're supposed to do. And they say, oh, I want to be my own boss. But being your own boss is actually one of the hardest things because, when we're in school, one of the reasons why we really like school is not necessarily because of what we learn. I don't think anyone likes school because of what they learn. Because if you like learning, then school is a bad place to learn.
Mm.
I won't even go into that. But anyway, um, one of the reasons why we like school is because of the schedule, the structure that it provides to us. And when we are done with school, when we graduate from whatever it is we're doing, yes, that pang of existential angst that we tend to face. And it's not necessarily because we are looking for, we don't have an income. For most people, it's like you're not going to sleep in the street. You still have a home to sleep in, you still have money to eat, you still have your basic needs met. But it's really that structure that's yanked away from them. And now they realize that they have to do the work themselves to build structure. That's the role school played, which is structuring our lives, is taken out. And now we have to do that. And I would say that's the tiniest example of what it means to be your own boss. You have to do that for yourself every morning when you wake up, and not just yourself. You have to do that for many other people. If you employ people, they and their families, their livelihoods, if their children are going to be able to stay in class and in school, it's on you. Like, who wants that sort of responsibility? Very few people. So I definitely think people should be more honest in that sense. You know, when they're making the decision for whether or not they really want to be their own boss. Is something else wrong? Maybe do they just not like where they're working at? Are they just burnt out and they just hate the fact that they have to wake up at 8 a.m. Like some of those things. And if you're in a situation like that, maybe negotiate some days working from like just negotiate, like try to optimize the conditions you're in. Do everything you can to optimize the conditions you're in for your personal proclivities and tendencies. And if you do everything you can, if you negotiate, higher pay, for example, if money is your problem, if you negotiate maybe some days off, if you negotiate like coming into the office later and maybe leaving later, if you negotiate getting like chair for your children in the office, all those things that you feel you would have if you were free and not in the confines of your job. If you're able to negotiate for all of that and you still feel like you want to do something on your own, then go ahead and do it. But I think some of the telltale signs that people are not ready. One is you're not passionate about anything. There's nothing specific you're deeply passionate about. Listen, I think that, and I'm not saying I've always been like this, but now after a few years of being an entrepreneur, I know this greatly. If you want to build a business, you're even if sometimes you're deluded about this, but your thinking should be, if I don't solve this problem, no one else in the world will. Even if someone else tries, no one can solve this problem the way I will. And it's not just wishful thinking. I know this deeply. Before I go to bed at night, I know that if I don't do this, there's no one else who will. That's the sort of that's the instinct that will drive you to study, especially if you want to start a business that is mission driven, that has some sort of mission drivenness to it. I mean, of course, if you're a student and maybe you want to sell selfie sticks and all of that to buy, that's great. And I love the hustle. Go ahead and do that. You don't need oh, I'm trying to change the world. You don't need that. So I think the answer I'm giving here is for like your life's mission. You deciding whether building a business is your life's work versus doing a quick hustle to get money and augment whatever it is you're doing. Those are two different things. Well, let me put it this way: there's a difference between being a um, you know, a a business owner and an entrepreneur.
Mm.
An entrepreneur is when you're an entrepreneur, that is you build structure, there's scale, there's long-term thinking, there is ownership that it's outside of you. But when you're a business owner, if I sell phones, and I just buy them on from China and I sell them in America where I make a markup, yeah, I'm a business owner. Am I an entrepreneur? It's debatable. But if I decide to take my phone business and decide I'm going to set up chains, I'm going to now figure out manufacturing, then I'm an entrepreneur now. I'm doing things at scale, I'm building structure. So figure out, maybe the precursor here is just figure out what sort of business owner you want to be. Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to do this long term? Is this something you want to do as your life's work? And if it's your life's work, then the expectations on you should be so heavy. Don't just up and leave and go do something and say it's your life's work. Like, that's not how it happens at all. That's not how it happens at all. The way I think about business, and if everyone here is a Christian, it's, if you're going to be a great entrepreneur, it's akin to what it means for a pastor to be called. Because from that moment on, everything about your life changes. You as a business owner is going to perpetually compete with the you that is, just wants to sleep in, and sometimes that slothful, lazy part of you will win. But you have to recognize that there's a sort of higher calling that you're called to. You have to be sacrificial. Others have to eat before you do. All of those things really matter, if you ultimately want to do a business. But that's where I'm going to, probably stop.
That is profound. I think that alliteration, rather, that parallel with, like, the calling of a pastor, I think that resonates with me so deeply. So really, what you're communicating is you would be able to tell the difference between, oh, I'm just I'm a hustler, I'm just looking for a side hustle, or, I just have this business, versus this is my life's mission. That's the unique difference. And you can tell that with, like, purpose, mission, responsibility. Like, it gets you up in the morning. It's bigger than you, essentially.
Yeah,
Which, for,
absolutely.
I'm about to say something. I hope it's funny and I hope it's not offensive, which, for a lot of the
Yeah.
lash techs that we have, for a lot of the braiders that we have, not be the case. So we have a lot of,
Yeah.
you mentioned Gen Z, which you are part of, by the
The cool thing is you can actually take something like as simple as lash tech and, you know, do that at such a grand scale where you say, look, I want to do this for a very long time. It could stem from a very deep personal place. Maybe I wasn't beautiful when I was younger. I know what it means. I saw how beautiful people got attention. I don't want anyone to ever feel like they're not beautiful anymore. I know how to do whatever lash techs do. And I know how that makes people more beautiful. And I'm going to use this as a way to make people feel great about themselves. And I'm maybe going to go from buying and installing on people to ultimately, my vision is to start to make my own. I don't know what material they use, if it's rubber to make whatever they do. So yeah, like you could take anything, no matter how mundane it is. You could be selling toothpicks, you could be selling ice cream, but you could take that. Once you tie a mission to anything, no matter what it is, you can change the world from your own little corner with that thing. I read Starbucks, like their mission statement, their vision. I'm like, you guys are selling coffee. Like, it's not that deep. It's like, but wow, like look at what they've built with that. When you hear them talk about what they're doing, when you hear McDonald's talk about their like the greasy burger, like you're like, wow, like if maybe I were building this, or if a normal person today were building, and the product you have is greasy burger that maybe doesn't taste as good, I bet you wouldn't tell a unique story around it the way they are. So how do we get our mindsets to where these people are, where they're selling something so mundane, their product is so mundane, but they know they may be, and I don't know if they're just doing this for PR, but there are people who genuinely connect that to a place of purpose. And it just illuminates the world around them, it illuminates their customers, their employees, themselves, and people around them. And it's just a beautiful thing to see.
What's fascinating is you just touched on the essence of branding. Like, branding is
Yeah.
about moving beyond a product and selling a feeling, which can be engineered. So that's fascinating. But from what you're saying, I understand now that the difference between the entrepreneurs who really change the world and just the business owners who can engineer these things is that it's deeply innate. It comes from somewhere that's real. And because it comes from
Yes.
somewhere that's real, it'll wake you up in the morning. It will drive you to Mad Men status. So that's
Yes.
wow.
Yes.
You could stop here and then everyone's good. But let's move on to the next. Okay, so what is your most impactful? And I didn't use the word failure here, I'm going to use anti-success. What is your
Hmm.
favorite and most impactful story so far?
Wow, God, there's so many of them. But one thing that I would say as an umbrella to answer this question is there's almost nothing that I really wanted in the past 10 years that I did not get. Okay, no, let me phrase this correctly. There's nothing that I so everything I wanted really much and did not get, in hindsight, I'm so grateful I did not. And again, everyone says, "Oh yeah, I'm grateful," but I'm seriously grateful that I did not choose those things because it's so clear to me how they would have altered my life differently. So maybe I'll go back to this is 2014, so 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, 2013. That's when I got out of secondary school. I wanted to study law. I didn't know why I wanted to study law. My classmate, my seatmate, who was my best friend at the time, when we're filling out our jam forms, it was in class. I was like, "Oh, what are you putting?" It's like law. I'm like, okay. And I wrote law too. Because I'm like, okay, sure, like, law, I think I'll be good at it. Like, it's fine. And then my jam, we wrote jam, and my jam score came out and it was terrible. It was so bad. I did not know what happened. You know what I mean? Then it sounded like I was making excuses, like, oh my God, I did not know what happened. I marked this thing myself. My score was really bad. I scored 198. It sounds crazy because that doesn't even sound like, but anyway, and I couldn't get admitted to study law. Um, but what's funny was I was thinking about it a few years ago because my friends who ultimately went to study law, when I was wrapping up my grad school degree, they were still final year students of law at the time. And it's not necessarily about rushing to do things first or, time, everyone has their own timelines, but it was like, wow, if I chose to study law, that would have been my entire identity. There's nothing else I would have done but wanting to be a decent lawyer. And knowing me, knowing the calling that God has over my life, like it's just like that's not what He did not want me to be a lawyer. He did not want me to. And there's how you can walk outside of your purpose and be useful. And it's a very scary thing because you can do something that's outside your purpose and be good at it. For me, I'd rather do something that's outside of my purpose and just be terrible and fail than do something that I'm not supposed to do and be good at it because would convince me that I'm not supposed to do that thing. So that's one example. I was really disappointed. I felt very disappointed in myself. I felt like my parents were disappointed in me. And for me, it's just like, okay, I want to make the next best thing for me was I'm going to study philosophy. I wanted to make the best of it. I wanted to do everything I can. That, I would say like that, chip on my shoulder made me. I joined the debate team. Really helped me build my debate and public speaking skills. I got to travel. I got on a plane for the first time in my life because of debate. I got to travel, outside of Nigeria for the first time. And my first time outside of Nigeria, I was traveling to Harvard to compete with students from schools like that, which is not everyone's first journey. That's one example. Grad school was the same thing. There was a grad school program I was hell bent on going to. I finished my application 8 months before the deadline. I got like 10 people who were currently in the program to review comprehensively my materials. Everything was great. I got invited to the semifinals. They flew me to New York. We had this fancy, interview session. We had this lunch. It was really nice. JFK's daughter was there, and I was telling her about how I was named after her father. It was really nice. For me, it's like I'm in already. And then they sent me a notification like you're waitlisted, and I didn't get off the wait list. I was so heartbroken. In hindsight, I'm so happy I didn't get into that because it's the path that God needed to take me to get to becoming an entrepreneur and get here. It would have completely been lopsided assuming I went with that program, because I would have ended up in corporate America, which God was not for me. So that clearly was not for me. So those are just two, but very monumental stories for me. But as an entrepreneur, it happens every day. There are things you want, you don't get, there are disappointments, things go wrong. Last year we had to completely pivot from, our business model, as it were. It was a great success for me internally because I knew we needed to. Outside, I think people kind of view that as a failure, but I'm like, you know what? You don't know anything about what's going on the inside. So, but the problem with people, that we typically encounter when we're in these moments where we go through what's a seemingly failure is a lot of times it's actually not failure. If you move on from something that deeply you should not be doing and move on to something else, how is that failure? But a lot of times we inherit sometimes the perceived fear. People are not telling us we failed, but we assume they think we failed. So we inherit that. We hold ourselves back from making necessary decisions that we're supposed to make, to move forward and make progress with our lives. And as young people, that's just really terrible because when you're young, the biggest gift you have is potential. And you can't just let potential be latent. You have to tinker around, you have to explore it, you have to mine potential, to see what's there for you and what you spend your life working on.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Remarkable. I find it interesting that the two stories you told were about school.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they are very monumental ones to remember, just given how much time
You
went
spent it.
into.
Yes. And I think the question you asked, I'm going to reframe it in a different way. What will people say? That is one of the most crippling things for a lot of young people. The people here could be
Yeah,
parents. It could be, I mean, imagine, I'm even trying to imagine like how many years of studying something and then all of a sudden I have to pivot. Like the fear of what will people say is probably enough to like make me question, even though I would know deeply intrinsically that this is something I'm supposed to do. So essentially, like a
yeah,
takeaway from this is don't care. I like
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
let me not move into that, but like the idea that people are not going to live your life for you, they're not even paying anything. I mean, parents are a different case, but like technically, they're going to live your life for you. You're the one who's going to have to walk those steps. You have to be true to yourself and be bold.
yeah,
And I love the fact that you mentioned our youth as well. The fact that we have so much. Not that we have so much time to waste, but these are the times that we can iterate, we can change, we
yeah,
can
yeah.
mold. It's not going to be possible when you're married with like three kids, or maybe it's
Much harder, much harder.
exactly. Yeah. So do those things, do those bold things. Well, thank you, Kennedy. All right. I have another question for you about school. As a philosophy and well, no. As a philosophy major, your undergrad, that's correct, right? Yes, you did mention that.
Correct.
There's no doubt in my mind that this has shaped your person and mindset and the way you think. If you could design a
Yeah.
class for undergraduates or young people generally on entrepreneurial philosophy, what would be the first lesson you teach?
It would be um intro to ethics. It definitely will be ethics. I think just some of the foundational principles in ethics and basically like having basic understanding and grasp of those. So it would be like deontological ethics, teleological ethics, maybe some social political philosophy. So essentially what that is like how were civilizations conceived? How did the ancient societies think about what it meant to conceive civilizations? Why do societies exist? Seriously, like why have we structured societies the way we've structured them? Because if you have that sort of top-down understanding of how, you know, politics, social politics scales from the, the broad um collective down to you as an individual, then you can even start to ask questions like, okay, as an entrepreneur, what is my role in the society I'm a part of? I don't know how many of you read The Economist, but there was an issue of The Economist that came out 2 years ago. And the cover title had a question. It was, what is the role of businesses in societies? And it's such a profound question, and I think it's a philosophical question. So I think, the whatever class I, design will try to answer questions like this. Why do businesses exist? Do businesses exist to, and make the owners of the business wealthy? Do they exist to make society wealthy? Do they exist to make society more productive? What are the moral limits of productivity, for example? So, things like that, I think it would be really interesting for any business owner to sort of have basic philosophical understanding of those concepts. The most important thing philosophy did for me was the ability to think from first principles. So the goal of this class, assuming I put it together, would not be to, make you a philosopher or to make you an expert in ethics, but it's just to really get the engines of your mind working and to get you to start to think from first principles because you need to refer to those a lot, when you're building your business. So yeah,
Let's assume that here, no one here knows what the principle, no. Did you say the
first
principle
principles.
or principles? Yes. What does that
Yeah.
mean?
So first, oh God, there are some things you just know, but you don't know how to break them down. So first principles is when you have a problem, breaking it down into its most fundamental constituent element. So, for example, if we say, um, what is the universe made of? Like, what is the no, okay, let's say what is the ultimate reason why we exist on in the universe? It's like we're going to take every aspect of that and break it down completely. Okay, what is the universe? What variables going to make in the universe? Who are we? Like, who am I as an individual? Like, it's the annoying thing that they say philosophers do where they always ask why and keep asking questions to be really annoying. But that's really what the enterprise of philosophy is. Like, for every problem you have, you ask why like 5 times. By the time you ask the fifth why, you now start to get a lot closer to the problem. That's what it means to think from first principles. It's like if I have a problem, if I need to build a house, if I need to build a mansion, and I need to start from first principles. What are the first basic things I need to do? I need to figure out the foundation. I need to figure out the structure. I need to figure out the substructure before I figure out the superstructure and everything that goes into this very complex mansion. So that's what first principles means. It's just like decomposing things to the simplest, most granular forms.
Do you think this is akin to brainstorming in any way?
Yeah, I mean, sure. Like, thinking from first principles is a tool that you can use in brainstorming. Because I mean, you can brainstorm very badly. And I mean, we mostly brainstorm badly versus goodly, I guess. So yeah, it's a tool that can be used, but most importantly, it's for your own self. It's for your own personal introspection. So, for example, a good way I break things down to first principles is, maybe if I walk into a room and I realize I feel insecure, it's like, okay, Kennedy, just pause. What's going on? Why do you feel insecure? Has someone said something? Has someone done something? Have you done something that makes you feel small? Maybe I've just told a lie, and if you want to feel small, the easiest way to do that is just tell a lie, like especially if you have a conscious spirit, or just do something that your spirit doesn't knows you shouldn't do. It makes you feel small. So, and usually these days it's so automatic. I sense when things are off within me, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Sometimes it's just like you dress badly, like never be caught on fresh. You'll feel better if you look well. So like that makes you feel less confident because you're in this room. But it's just so important. It's very important for personal, that self-introspection that you need. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. What is one belief or a mindset that you've held from early in your career that you've since let go of, and what prompted the shift?
Ah, a mindset that I've since let go of. There's an incredible amount of luck that is involved in attaining any form of success. Um, Luck without hard work would get you nowhere, but hard work in itself without luck will not. And I think that early on, there's some sort of deification of hard work that in some ways I'm still like that. There's a deification. I created a deity out of like hard work. Like if you work hard, because honestly, that's how my teachers raised me. In some ways, that's how my parents raised me, in secondary school, to an extent, even university. And that's how I sort of trained myself. Um, but I think I've really learned that there is there's other things outside of hard work that you need to be successful. You need to be a likable person. I'll tell you this, Debbie, and everyone on the call, there are heights that you would never attain if people don't like you. No matter how competent you are, they'll keep you around because you're competent and they can get you to do stuff for them. But the highest levels of power in this world are accessed through familial relationships, and that's contingent on people liking you. So if I don't like you, no matter how smart you are, no matter how talented you are, you're never going to get that opportunity. Of course, except in things like sport, football, where it is just your talent that speaks for. But even at that, your couple with a coach can take you out. Like if your coach doesn't like you because you have a bad attitude, that can take you out and end your career. You could get kicked out of the organization. So people liking you really, 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 really matters in ministry, in business, in politics, in most spheres of life where there's value and power, and authority. Let me put it that way. You need people to like you. So a lot of those lessons I learned, it's not just hard work. Hard work is a very important piece of the puzzle, but no one should create a deity out of hard work. And try to be balanced in your growth. Don't just grow in one specific thing, which is maybe if you write code, like I'm just going to be a better coder. Yes, but learn how to run effective meetings, learn how to make a few decent jokes, learn how to be funny, maybe if you need to, so people like you, learn how to dress well. I don't know, learn how to talk to women if you're a guy. Like all of those things help, honestly. So, just be very well-rounded in your growth, in your development, and don't necessarily save something for later. There are some things that if you don't do them now, it'll be much, much, much more difficult for you to do when you're older. So now is the time to do them. That's something I think has changed, and I'll say has changed for me.
Can you give us a ratio? No, not a ratio, a percentage. So hard work to grace, because I think that's what you're talking about too, even in that regard.
It's probably 50-50.
Okay. Okay. Fair
It's
enough.
probably 50-50. But what's funny is hard work without grace would take you nowhere. But grace without hard work would also take you nowhere.
Hmm.
Because you can be grace and have all the grace. I mean, there's salvific grace, I guess, which we're all entitled to, and we don't need to work for it. But you can have a grace upon your life and you do nothing with it.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's very important that it's 50-50, honestly. I genuinely think it's 50-50.
That's very fair. Very fair.
Yeah.
I have a prompt for you, and I know you're going to go off in a very beautiful tangent because it's something you speak on a lot. Self-confidence.
Ooh, what's your prompt? I just self-confidence, just that.
Yes.
I love you. Yeah, I love this. I love this. I love this question style. So something I've thought about, but maybe I've not even said or shared, regarding self-confidence is there is self-confidence is a byproduct of how you feel about yourself. Sorry, my light went out, but we're back in a second. Okay, it's back. Is a byproduct of how you feel about yourself and the things you do. So you can have, say, high self-esteem if you've not done or if you don't do estimable acts. If you tell yourself you're going to do something and you consistently don't do it, you can't hold yourself accountable to your own word. It's going to be really, 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 really difficult for you to become self-confident. Like, I mean, just we know how we feel when maybe we're really tired, but we wake up and go to the gym, for example, despite being tired. Like we feel like we can punch through a wall after that and nothing can stop us. Or when you're really tired and you want to sleep, but you're like, oh, I'm going to pray still. And you still go ahead and pray. You're like, wow, nothing can stop me. That's doing an estimable act. Like that's an estimable act. That's really how you build self-esteem. A lot of people think that reputation is something that people have of them, but the most important reputation is the reputation you have with yourself. So if, for example, I tell myself, oh, Kennedy, man, I'm going to do this thing by 9 p.m. By 9 p.m., I know I'm sure as hell. I trust myself, that I am going to do it. That's where self-confidence comes from. Like it will be hard for someone else to make me feel insecure and small and weak if I do the things I tell myself I'll do, if I do estimable act, if I say the truth, regardless of what the consequences are. If I do all of those things, then I'm shoring up the base for my self-esteem. And there'll be days where my self-esteem is challenged and you would need those things to fall back to. It's like, oh yeah, today I feel, scruffy today, but wow, but look at this person I am. Like, I mean, I'm an honorable person. I tell the truth. I do the things that look, there's nothing for me to be sad about. My world is great and my life is great. But if you're someone who does the opposite of that, and every word that comes out of your mouth is a lie, and people can't trust you for anything, you can't trust yourself for anything. And it's just you can't have self-esteem. You can fake it, you can dress nice and do a power walk and all of those things they tell you to do when you feel you can do all of those things, but it's shallow, like it fizzles away when no one is there. So yeah, that's what I'll say.
That's so profound. The most important reputation is the one you have with yourself. That I think that
Yeah,
that's like that's a key for life for anyone and everyone. And for me
yeah,
personally, even what you just spoke about, I'm able to even give myself grace in times where I need a break because I have this backlog of, estimable acts because I know this is not me. So I can take a break today. It's fine. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty profound. In addition to that, when would you say was the moment that you knew who Kennedy was? Was that a moment or was it like a compilation of different days or moments in time?
Mhm. Um, I would say I've always been very conscious, actually. I don't know, maybe not conscious of who I was, but I've always been a very attentive person, even as a child, right? When we go to parties, I realize, oh, like, children who have wealthy parents are treated differently than I am. I wasn't mad about it, to be honest. I was never like, oh, you're traumatized, like none of that. It was just like interesting. That was something I noticed. Um, you notice how you just notice things like how, for example, on the playground, when you're going to play sports, competence takes preeminence. Like, there was one very specific day where earlier in the day, this was in primary school, we had to take pictures with the like pictures for the school's billboards and everything. And they came to the class and they selected like 4 or 5 people from our class who had the best uniform. They just bought new uniforms at the time. And of course, it was the people with rich parents, well, richer parents who could afford the new uniforms immediately they bought them. But it was so funny because later that day, I remember thinking, because we were on the playground, we were about to play football. And it's like at the playground, the person who was wearing the captain armband his name was Sikiru, one very scruffy guy. But it's like competence matters there. It's not your parents' money, it's not your new school uniform. There is a very different domain of play, like how competent you are determines who is captain, who gets called to the field. So I just used to notice all of those different things, like, like life is interesting in this way, but it's different in this way, and it's interesting in this way. Um, so I think through all of that, I found myself, there was this sort of epistemic loneliness that, I had to navigate, in some sense, because I'm observing the world. I'm like, this is interesting. I wasn't sure if other people were observing and paying attention to similar things I was paying attention to. Um, but I would say in terms of knowing myself, knowing the power I carry, knowing who I've been called to be, definitely like, happened when I got born again and, started to read and spend more time in the word. And just like, okay, this is who God has made me to be. This is the calling on my life. Wow. Why did I not realize this sooner? I've always kind of known, I've always thought I was special. But in my head, I'm like, everyone should think they're special. Doesn't everyone feel this way? Like, what, But I've always felt like, oh, I'm special. And that doesn't mean I'm better than anyone else. It just means I'm great. And if you're great, God bless you and I love you and I want to work with you. And that's wonderful. So I've always felt that. And I knew it was not for nothing. There was a reason why I felt that way because okay, there's a call on my life. Like God has put me here to do great things. And that's why I feel special, because if I'm not special, then why would I feel special? I don't know. So, yeah,
I love that. That means you were a very awakened young person, being able to make
I
those.
was.
And you know what? The term all things work together for your good is making it that's the I think that's a narrative that's been weaved in your entire life because even the things you
Yep.
study, like the places like what you were talking about, like there's nothing that you've ever wanted that you actually regret not getting because you weren't it wasn't supposed to be in your path. So this awareness as a young person, philosophy, I heard you in another interview talking about like how your professor wanted you to be a teacher. It makes sense. Like the way you're pattern,
Yes,
um,
he did.
all those things. So it's so remarkable. Like this is a story of grace, I think. I mean, I can resonate, but let's not get into that. And this is my final question for you. And then we'll take a couple from the audience. So if you have a
Yeah.
question, start typing it in actually send it to me privately, please. So choose my name and send me your question for Kennedy, and we could take your question. So the final one is my pen just flew away. As a leader and someone prominent in the media space, I've noticed now this is very interesting. So pay attention here. I've noticed that in interviews and on stage, you sometimes choose tact over directness. It's almost I can actually see the wheel turning in your mind when this happens. Um, I imagine that you have to navigate this balance with your team and others as well. How do you decide when to be tactful versus direct, especially in this
Hmm.
generation that you love to talk
Oh,
about?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the situations call for it, right? So if you're trying to, the difference between those two times is different between when I'm trying to maybe pass off an instruction or communicate something that maybe needs to be done, versus when you're trying to work on the minds of someone, and it doesn't matter what the platform is. It could be, a call like this, and this gets put out, that whoever is going to watch this, ultimately, the end goal for them is hopefully it does something on their mind, no matter even if it's just one person, right? So it's in those times you have to one, I try to be very emotionally alert. In those times, I don't say things I don't mean. Everything I say I mean is true to me in the moment. It feels true. And very honestly, that's why when I, for example, have public speaking engagement and I go somewhere to speak publicly, I try to not interact with too many people before, because when I want to, I want it to flow from a natural place. Something happened last year. I got invited to some university here in Lagos to go speak, and when I went there, the time it was supposed to start, he ran off by so much. I mean, he ran past by so much, and there was no formal communication, and I was a little worked up, and I really wanted to. My heart was in a place where I want to, but I could not. There was no way I could, because at that moment where there is what 700 students, I want to be able to mean what I say to them. It's just like, but my mind was already distorted. And if I go up and I read a speech, like God forbid, like that's not the way I communicate. It's dead. I like to be animated when I think, and I like to think in real time when I speak. That's also one of the reasons why I don't like to look at questions in advance too. So it allows me think in real time. But if it's like, okay, pass this specific instruction, it's like, okay, do this, and it's very concise. But when it has to do with the minds and souls of people, a little bit more attention.
That makes sense. So really just tact, emotion, and then, okay, that makes sense. I think that answers my question because I was very curious about it. And I was wondering, do you get any media training?
No, none. I mean, no. So, well, in 2017, I did a program which, you probably know, and James and I did that program. It's called Three Dot Dash. I mean, we had a media day where for like 4 hours we went to a PR firm, but come on, that's not media training. So, you mean have I undergone media training?
The reason I'm asking is because, like, you're such a truthful person. I think you will say what you
I'm
mean.
such a what person?
A truthful person.
Okay, yeah.
I imagine that you will always say what you mean. And I'm wondering, because now we're in a generation where, cancel culture is a thing. Everyone has their own truth, some reality, and some, yeah. And then as someone who's out,
Yep.
yeah, like how are you thinking about that? Is there any thought towards that, especially as you gain more momentum and your platform even grows bigger?
Only God can cancel me. No human being can cancel me. So, I honestly don't pay that much time and attention to that. It's just like I say what I mean. Is what I'm saying true?
Mhm.
Is it true? Not even is it my truth? Because there's nothing like my truth.
Mhm.
There's true and there's false. And it's not up to you whether something is true or false. Is it true? Do I know it to be true? Am I acting in truth? It's not like, oh, I'm always right, or then I don't make mistakes, but it is even in those moments where I make mistake, I'm not conscious that it's a mistake. And when I have evidence to prove otherwise, I restitute and I upgrade my knowledge system and I move forward and I get smarter. I don't spend any time thinking about that at all. I say what I'm supposed to say. I try to not talk. I try to not just say things, for the clickbait and all of that. Like that would be me acting a lie. That would be me living a lie. So when I need to say something, I say it, and that's it. Yeah.
Profound. Only God can cancel me. Hashtag. I'll put that on the t-shirt. Okay. I don't see any personal questions here. So I'm about to move on, guys. If you want to ask Kennedy something, you should ask him now. But to wrap up, kind of, where can people reach you if they want to? Where is the best place to reach out to you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, Instagram is best. So Kennedy.Ekezie on Instagram. Also LinkedIn, Kennedy Ekezie. So the name you see on your screen on LinkedIn and Instagram. Um, yeah. And yeah, that's best. And if you want to email, my email is on my Instagram. So you can just click email and it will direct you to.
I do have a question. Yay! Oh, okay. This is beautiful. He actually has a video about this on his YouTube channel. But I'm gonna go ahead and ask you in case like you have like an overarching thing. So Adora says here, what are your views on how to network effectively?
I have a whole video. You should definitely go watch it. But the summary, if there's, one nugget to summarize that video is, um, I really encourage young people to network horizontally, as much as you can. Like if you had 100 eggs and they all represented one person you can build a connection with, like spend like 75 of those eggs horizontally, and then vertically, like, networking up to people who are higher ahead of you. Usually the most sort of life-changing connections you build up with your peers. People who are further ahead of the journey, yes, they'll guide, they can hold you accountable, but from a distance, all you do, you just like, it's great to know them, it's great to have them, and they can be very helpful when you need them to unblock unblock things for you. But more often than not, the people who will rub off on you and mold you into someone better, they're your peers, your peers who are as foolish as you are, who you're, just, those are the people, like those are the people. And if you build and develop the ability to pay attention, recognize potential, respect and honor potential. One thing we do is, oh, when you have access to someone, oh, they are my friend, even though you know they have a certain grace, even though you know they have a certain competence, you tend to rubbish it. Maybe the reason why we do is because we don't want them to stand in judgment of us and make us feel foolish and small and little. But that's a very bad way to live life, Recognize the potential and the talent other people have, honor it. And because the reason why it's important is because in honoring them, you feel more honorable. You feel like you feel more. You feel like you're someone who is, you also recognize that other people would see that about you. You believe that other people can see what's special and unique about you. And as a result, you just start to like yourself a lot more. So just honor people who are close to you. Don't try to, shortchange the game. And when people try to play a fast one, it's like all these cheap tips and tricks to, I've never asked anyone in my life since I was born, will you mentor me? I would never ask anyone in my life. I don't think I will. Let me just put it that way. Will you be my mentor? And I have mentors. I've had mentors, and the reason why is because a a mentoring relationship is not. It's not like a marriage where you ask, "Do you?" I do. Like you, it is one that forms over time. It's one that forms over time, and it forms when you stay accountable to them. If you do something, oh, hey, look at this thing I just did. These are the things I want to do. I just wanted to keep you updated. It shouldn't matter to you whether they respond or not. If they just know that they read it, that's okay. When you go and do that thing and you come back and say, oh, hey, remember last time I told you I'm going to work on these things. 3 months have passed. I've worked on it. These are my results. But I have this small challenge. Do you know who I can call? I'm trying to reach this person. Can you help me? 90 out of 100 times they would help you, because the good thing is they know that with or without them, you're going to be successful. They want to be a part of that journey. They want to be a part of that story, right? Because they know that whether or not I help this person is going to win in life. They're going to succeed in life. So I may as well just want to be a part of that journey. And people who are way ahead of us, they look for ways to help. They want us to make it easy for them to help us. So be honest, be genuinely authentic when you're going about with networking, and don't try to steal from people or to farms them, and it just doesn't work, and they recognize when we're doing that.
Thank you, Kennedy. That was incredibly profound. And I definitely suggest that video on the YouTube. I'm trying to read Oba's question to decrypt it. But I mean, Kennedy, you can probably even see it too. I think his
Question
question.
that I have. Okay, how do you increase your work ethic effectively? There's a book I recommend. It's called The One Thing. um I completely recommend. It's funny because I read that book about 2 months ago with my community. And I hosted a conference last weekend where my friend George was also talking about that book, and I love the way he explained it. So the one thing is really a book that nudges you to focus on right now at this point in my life, what is the most important thing, using the analogy of the domino effect. When I push this particular block down, it sends down every other block, and that can go on for an hour, right? What is that first thing I need to push down? For you, for example, is it music? Is it design? Is it psychology? Is it storytelling? Is it social media marketing? For Kim Kardashian, it was, what was it for her? I don't know. Man.
I guess acting.
And it's funny, So I don't know what it was for her, but now, like 2 years ago, she opened a private equity firm. What? It's just the point. If she started out, saying, "Oh, I am Kim Kardashian," or whatever her real name would have, I don't know if that's her real name. Like, "Oh, hey, I'm Kim Kardashian and I'm a private equity, executive." Like, no one would have paid attention to that. But she needed to be everything she was. I guess she was a model. She was a Kanye West wife. That's what I know about her. Like she was those things. So, she needed to be those things. Like that was her one thing at the time that allows every other thing. I mean, Beyonce sells perfumes now. Rihanna sells makeup, and her makeup company is worth $3 billion. If Rihanna started out 20 years ago just trying to sell makeup, I doubt that her company would have gotten to $3 billion, right? But her one thing was, I'm going to do music for 20 years and then everything else becomes easy. So we all have to find that thing. And usually that thing is our purpose. It's our calling. So for you, is it music? Is it design? Is it psychology? What does psychology mean? Do you want to be a licensed therapist? Do you just intellectually like psychology? So it is focusing on that thing, even within the realm of being a creative director and marketing specialist, too broad. What exactly? When we say marketing specialist, brand marketing, is it product marketing? What exactly is it within marketing that will launch you to the rest of everything that you need to do? So it's very important to focus on that one thing. Figure out what it is. The only sad thing is no one can do that for you. No one can do that for you. You have to do it for yourself and then trust that your honest pursuit of that one thing is going to birth all the success that's enough for you in this world.
Remarkable. I was going to ask you to recommend a book for us, so that's perfect. And we are 2 minutes to the clock. Thank you so much, Kennedy, for your time. I really appreciate this. I've learned so much. I wish I could show you my notes. I have a lot of notes, and this was just incredibly insightful. We should do this again. I'm going to make it happen.
We should. Say the word. You're the boss, so I'll say yes.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you for being here.
Of course.